Okay, you got to unmute yourself. I don't. Thank you everybody for joining us. We were having some technical difficulties this morning. I don't know what happened. We was getting some weird echo, but we got it solved. Thank you guys for being here. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight Series presented by the Black Podcasters Association, where twice a week we shine a spotlight on a Black podcaster, creative or professional from our online community. My name is Corey Gums, and I am the founder as well as your host. If you're watching this on YouTube or one of your favorite social media platforms, please make sure you like, subscribe, or follow, and tap any notification bells to get alerts of our upcoming episodes. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the Black Podcasters Association or learn more about it, you can go to our website at blackpodcastersassociation.com. Today, we would like to welcome trademark attorney, strategic business consultant for creative entrepreneurs, and host of the Lurk Lounge, Summer Burnley. She's a wonderful part of an elite group of less than 1.7% of Black attorneys who practice intellectual law. But she's also a podcaster, so that's why we have her here. Thank you. Oh, shoot, this is the wrong name. Oh, God. Anyway, Summer. Jesus Christ, today is one of them days. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate having you here. Thanks again for your patience for all these mistakes that are happening. I guess let's get started. Let's first learn about who you are, what you do, and how did you get into podcasting?
Hey, thanks for having me, Corey, and the Black Podcasters Association. I am Summer Burnley, as you stated, and um, from a law perspective, I've known I wanted to be an attorney forever. From a podcasting perspective, I had no idea that I would be like dipping my toes into the podcasting world, and we are now wrapping up. I think we're episodes away from finishing up season 2. So I knew that my platform and what I was supposed to be doing was supposed to be a lot larger than my law firm. And I'm a Christian. I believe in the Lord, my Jesus, and my Savior. And we always have these conversations, and he's always talking to me about how I need to work with him um, to better do my passion and my skill set and all those types of things. And so he was talking to me about a podcast, and I was honestly frightened and freaked out because first of all, I'm like, what am I going to say? Who's going to listen to me talk? And what am I going to talk about? And for the longest, I was hesitant because I was like, well, what am I going to call it? What am I going to call it? And then finally, literally one day out the blue, he's like, "You're gonna call it the Lurk Lounge." And when I had the name, it's like, all right, we're just gonna keep on. We're gonna go with it and keep on rolling. And I happened to meet a young lady who's now one of my favorite people, Bethany Hawkins of Crackers and Soup. And basically was like, sis, the Lord has told me I need to do this thing. I could learn how to do all this stuff on my own. I don't have time. I need you to hook it up. And we've been rocking and rolling and putting it out there ever since.
All right, that's wonderful. Yeah, there goes Bethany's name dropping. So all going some way, somehow, some way, my name gets dropped or her name gets dropped. So really, yeah, she's great. Let's talk about the name. Where did the Lurk Lounge come from? Because I think that's an interesting name.
So when I tell you that he gave me this name, and it literally was me thinking about the concept and what I wanted it to be about. And so the Lurk Lounge is a conversational podcast, and we basically talk about the real deal of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. So we cover business topics, legal topics, just being about an entrepreneur trying to balance it all. And it really started the idea for the podcast because I was having a conversation with one of my good girlfriends. We're on the phone, and she's literally like talking about how hard it is and complaining about clients and like her business and whatnot. And she's like in the store. This is all pre-COVID, y'all. She's in the store, and somebody walks up to her, and she like puts me on hold. And so they're talking and catching up, and they're about the business. And she flips the script and is like, "Oh my gosh, things are so great. I love it. Yada 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 yada." And so, when she comes back to the phone, I'm like, "Girl, you were just over here like witching about how much you don't like this business." And it was this whole idea of not wanting people to see you fail. You don't want to hear, the feedback from other people and whatnot. And we have all of these wonderful conversations between us about the real deal about what it's like to be an entrepreneur and run a business. And I feel like those are the conversations that people need to be in on. That's the type of information that people needed and that we needed to be having. And so hence the Lurk Lounge.
Okay, that's dope. Yeah, we all have that mask we wear, right? We talk to our friends and our fellow associates, and we're like, yeah, this, that, and the other, blah blah blah, and then forward facing, you're like, everything's great. It's like that
It's
meme with the dog
great.
seeing the fire going on around you, and you're like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, everything's fine. Um,
Yeah.
so how has, because you say you're finishing up your second season, right?
Yeah.
How has that experience been from your first season to where you're at now with your podcast?
So it's been good, not what I expected, right? And to be honest, if I'm keeping it real, I don't really know what I expected. It was just like the
Mhm.
Lord was like, "You need to do this thing," so I'm like, "Okay, I'm doing it," right?
Mhm.
Literally, really didn't have any idea what I was doing. I listened to one podcast before I started my own, so it's not like I was this huge person who just 100% believed in podcasts, right?
Right.
Um, so the beauty of it for me and what's been really fun is being able to meet so many other entrepreneurs, being able to meet so many other women who are out there and have them tell their story, but also give them a platform that they can also use to promote themselves, kind of like the spotlight, right?
Right.
Something else that they can use for brand recognition, something else that they can use to have people also have that no trust like factor for them and their business. And the podcast really is for women of color and their allies. And so it really was important to me that we had a space where we could talk amongst ourselves, but it also be like a little intimate, free flowing conversation. Because a lot of times we don't get those places, we don't get those platforms to just be us and showcase who we are, what we do, and what our stories are.
All right. That's dope. So what made you, I guess, when you first started the process, because you said that you never listened to really, you only listen to one podcast, you've never done anything like this before, which is a different, good perspective to have. One thing I like about the shows, we see how many the journeys everybody takes and the path
Yeah.
that led them to where they're at. When you decided, how did you decide? What was the process for you to decide who your niche was, who was going to be the voice, where your voice was going to target? Who did you decide? Like, how did you go through that process? Is it just
So
something that just
all
came to you, or you just like, I want to do this, or it was a trial and error period?
So it wasn't trial and error. When I tell you it was the Lord, Corey, if we got believers out there, y'all know what I'm talking about. Literally, it was given to me. The Lord says, "This is what you're going to do, and this is who you're going to work with." And at the time, I was in a big like networking group, and basically said, "Hey, y'all, this is what I'm doing." And most of them were women of color, and their allies was like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. I need guests." I laid out what it was for the Lurk Lounge. And like, if this resonates with you, then let's chat. And so I'm very big on like customer and client journey, really good on like big on systems and processes. So I'd already had like the flow set up, right? So um, contact forms, we chat before the interview because I'm like, I need to make sure you're a good fit. I need to make sure that you know you are the person that the somebody in this audience and who I'm trying to cater to is going to resonate with. And so that was really important for me. And then kind of just had like the interview and selection process, then scheduled dates for recording. And then it kind of just went from there.
Okay. So were you like like when you did your first episode, were you nervous, or were you like, okay, since I set everything up and I kind of had an idea how I want to do things, did it just come to you easy? Like, well, how did that go for you?
So I'm also type A and a little bit of black girl magic nerd. So I stalked all of my guests beforehand. That vetting process was like real for me. It was like an in-depth questionnaire. I need to know who you are, what you're about, how can I stalk you. I put together presentation notes and things beforehand. Because while it is a conversation, I mean, as you know, it's like I need something to like keep me on task. So it's like if we veer off from these notes, that's okay, but just in case I have questions and things that I want to know. And so my podcast is kind of set up in the way where we come on, there's the intro music, I give introduce the guest a little bit, like a quick little snippet, I give the biz tea, which is like a business or legal tip, and do a more formal introduction. Then we hop into the conversation. So for it to feel natural, like girlfriends talking, it was very important that the vibe was right.
Oh, that's dope. Yeah. So you basically like did a lot of work pregame before you even got started, which is, it's hard for a lot of podcasters. So I'm glad you said that because hopefully somebody watching this can be inspired and realize that they just need to take their time sometimes before they just press record. I do want to talk to you about the vetting part, but let's talk more
Yeah.
in a little bit. But because I know from a legal point of view, there's a as we heard in the news. I don't know if you heard the news about the whole Cardi B case with Tasha K.
Tasha K.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna, I'm gonna pick your mind on that in a little bit, but I want to concentrate on your podcast right now. So, when somebody listens to your podcast, I know you say it's about talking about entrepreneurship. What kind of conversations can they expect? And I know you focus mainly on women of color uh, interviews and stuff and their allies, right? Is this something that men could also listen to gain some insight and help from as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I actually have one male guest who has been on the podcast, which was probably one of my favorite episodes, to be honest, so far, because the conversation was just so real. Um, it was just so organic, and he just had such a beautiful story. But we have entrepreneurs who literally have gone as him, like from the block to the boardroom. We've got CPAs and accountants. I have coaches, consultants. I have people in the podcasting industry. I also have, people who are in other legal arenas. And I also have what I like to call some woo woo people, right? So, some people who are going to talk to you about manifestation and crystals and all that kind of good stuff. So, from a genre perspective and journey and what they do, there's a little bit of something for everyone.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important, just listening to you talk. I didn't even realize it for myself. Typically, when you hear someone say that their podcast is for a particular group, kind of like automatically just say, okay, I'm not going to listen to that. But when you're talking about entrepreneurship, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter from certain perspectives and certain experiences, but the information, especially about the things you go through in your business, for instance, like the
Yeah,
self-doubt or the obstacles you may face, it doesn't matter what sex you are or what you identify as. So I
correct.
do want to I'm going to add that to my repertoire for the Black Podcast Association to help bridge that gap too, because we should be listening to each other and learning from each other. So me as a man, when I engage with a woman in business, I can understand some of the perspective she has and what she may be feeling in that particular situation, and help to shape or be more cognizant of how I approach it. Because sometimes, with guys, we just tend to think we rule the world, and that's not always the case. So
I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but but you know what, Corey? Like I think about it from the perspective of what's the movie Think Like a Woman, Think Like a Man.
think it's Think Like a
I,
Man. I don't know.
okay, I was gonna
I've
say I
never
can't
seen them,
remember
so I
which one
can't.
it was.
I don't never
Um
seen them, so I'm listening at this point.
but from the perspective of, if you are interested in even like the female brain, right? And
Mhm.
how female brain operates in business, the type of things and types of struggles that they go through. I'm curious about as a male, okay, how can I relate, right? Or even if you are a male who is an entrepreneur and part of your audience is women, this would be a podcast or something for you to listen to, because we have so many different types of women who are entrepreneurs who cover multiple, spectrums and skill sets of various industries, that there would be something there for you to pick up on.
I mean, building this group, building the association has been a wonderful experience. Most of the support and most of the great ideas I've that have helped me get to where I'm at with the group is has come from Black women like that, like.
Because we're awesome.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, no
yeah,
shade to
so, like, a lot of
anybody
people
else,
don't
but
know that, like, I mean, there's guys out there, that I'm not trying to discount the brothers that came and helped as well and offered their assistance, but getting me out of my shell to even do this was, 2 Black women really clowning me for, like, 6 months, like, get over myself, they got me that, and then, I have my one of my best friends, she's been there from day one, just being, during those times when I was like, I'm ready to quit and all that stuff, and then, I'm gonna do it. Bethany has been a huge help the past couple of months as well. I got to give her daisies, as I tell her.
She
But
deserves the field of daisies,
especially
let me tell
yeah,
you.
especially in this space, in the podcasting space, you realize how intricate the conversations and how conversations are moved forward by black women, but as well as women as a whole. So it's
Yeah,
important for us to, and the whole goal of podcasting from its inception was to all right, Bethany, uh is to learn. That's what podcasting was about in the beginning, was to spread
yeah,
information, have conversations to help people learn and solve problems. So I think it is important that, as we move further into 2022 and beyond, that we really have to change the landscape and the paradigm that people, how they view podcasts, because right now, because of COVID, people look at it as money generating and stuff like that, and it tends to forget its roots. So I think it's
yeah.
great what you're doing and having those conversations. How much is your legal experience, you being an attorney, played a role into your podcast and those conversations, or are you able to separate the two?
I'm able to separate the two. I like to, and like I said, I do a little event that's called the Biz Tea, where I do give legal and business tips. And I kind of leave it there. I mean, I even have, a disclaimer like, this is not legal advice. You need to seek an attorney. Like I can't advise you on what your situation is. So I don't, go into advising my guests while we're in their segment. Of course, like outside of the show, they're more than welcome to come and like retain me and be a client of the firm. But for ethical, legal reasons, I don't do that on the show.
All right, yeah, I heard the disclaimer. Okay, so you got to retain her if you want this. If you want the legal advice, which is important for people to know. Because that's another part. We all have our own personal businesses, and sometimes we have to let people know, like in these conversations and these interactions, that yes, that's a whole separate thing we have to do, and you got to retain me. To
Yeah,
get that professional advice and stuff like that. So, um,
yeah.
how has the podcast helped your business? Has it helped your business? Let me rephrase that. Has it helped your business?
Um, I don't know that it has. Um, and it may have in a backwards or wayward way, and I just don't know it. But and look, we're gonna name drop Bethany again, but she has helped me merge the two a little bit
Mhm.
because I very much had them distinct. Like, the podcasting is one thing, my law firm is something completely different. Um, and part of me was just kind of like, I need to keep it that way just because of who I am. And I do put things in buckets. That's just me.
Mhm.
Um, but I will say we have a little switch up that's going to come for season 3 and season 4, and so it will be a little bit more education. So there will be a little bit more legal and business infused in the podcast, but still not like legal advice per se. More
Right,
like education, which I'm all
right.
for.
Okay. What has been what has been one obstacle since you started podcasting that you've overcome, since that you've overcome, either personally or within your podcast?
I would say a big obstacle for me, starting the podcast in general, like just putting myself out there,
Mhm.
from a business strategy standpoint, even from like my law firm. I love the idea of being able to work hand in hand and even like in the background of the businesses to get them together. And so with the podcast, as the host, it's like you have to be the front and center. You are the person who is leading the conversation. You are the person, who's calling all these people in. And so being comfortable with the attention that can bring is probably something that I've had to overcome.
All right. So what can I know you said you're working on season 3 and 4. You plan on switching it up a little bit. What can some people expect in those seasons outside of just adding more legal education?
So it's gonna be still conversational, but we're gonna talk about like some of the various, like stories and scenarios that both myself and my clients, other people in the legal field have experienced, so that you guys will be able to learn from them as well. Because I think people are good what they're good at. And unfortunately, for most of us, if you have not gone to law school, legal is not one of them. And the same thing for business. I always say you may be the best cake baker, but that does not necessarily mean you know how to manage and operate a bakery, right?
Right.
So have some of those things, statistics, and stories so that we'll be able to learn and take from those to be able to move forward with their stuff. So,
That's dope. I'm definitely adding your podcast to my long list of podcasts. I need to listen to them. I need some advice and stuff. I need inspiration 'cause
what
I
is
tell
it
people all
like?
the time
Listen,
behind the
rate,
scenes,
review.
I mean, it looks easy on the front end, but behind the scenes is chaos for me, and I know I need to get it together. So, and, and fellas, that's where I say one thing about Black women: they will help you get it. They will help you get it organized and get it together. So, make sure
That's
you have
all what
some on
I'm
your
about.
team, huh?
Yes. I said that's what I'm all about. Like I am from a business and legal perspective, to me, it is all about like that back end organization because that's really is what going to help, whether it's your podcast, whether it's the bakery, whatever kind of business you run, that's what's going to help you be most successful. Because I think a lot of times we get in this perpetual state of being a worker bee or being an employee of the business. You don't allow yourself a lot of time to work on your business because you're too busy working in the business. And so, having that organization and that foundation and some of those systems and processes helps to be able to do that from a big perspective.
Okay, cool. So like, how do you normally do your episodes? How do you release them? Is it like once a week, or what is the format that you've chosen to release your episodes on?
They're every second and fourth Thursday of the
Okay. Every second, say that again. I'm kind of lost you for a second.
second and fourth Thursday.
Oh, second and fourth Thursday. Okay. And
Yep.
how has the response been from an audience point of view for you? Because typically most people like to consume a lot of, content at one time. How has the response from your audience or your listeners been in regards to the two basically twice a month expectation of your podcast? Because most people tend to go with weekly, daily, or try to be as consistent
Yes.
with that as possible.
Honestly, I don't know. Um, and I say that because outside of, like people who like email you or DM you about what they thought about an episode,
Mhm.
I don't really talk about it too much or have too much interaction about it like outside of them. And so because of the law firm, my podcast, I guess you could say is my side hustle, right? It's not the thing that I do often. And that's actually something, that I have to work on myself is even talking about it more, still, putting it out there more, engaging, more people about it. Because this is not monetary for me. Like I don't care to make one penny from it. I don't intend to monetize it or make money for it. And I think I'm okay with that from an aspect because I'm doing what I was told to do from him. So I don't know that it's necessarily for me. It could be for the person that is the guest of my podcast or the person who listened to the one episode, whether that be one listener or 20 listeners, right? Um, anyway, that's why I'm kind of okay with that. So I
Uh,
guess probably a little bit in the on the outside, probably from what most people are regarding their podcast in that area. But yeah,
well, I think that's important for people to hear because yes, like Bethany just posted in the comments that's why success is defined differently for each person. It comes down to what the goal is, and one of the first things I do when I work with clients is I want to understand what your goal is, what you want to achieve with this. It's okay for you to want to monetize it, but it's okay for you to just
yeah,
do this because this is what you want to do or hobby, whatever it is. But I think the most important thing for a person looking to get into podcasting is they have to be honest with themselves and understand completely
yeah,
what their goal is, because then that determines your structure, your organization, even the legalities of what you're doing and stuff like
yeah.
that, right? So I think that's important. And I think that also helps you manage your expectations and not put too much pressure on yourself. Where
Oh
somebody who's
yes,
looking to make it into a business, it's a little bit more pressure because you're trying to figure out how to get a return on your investment. So
correct,
it that
correct.
I mean, I like hearing that, I like hearing that from people because also reminds us what podcasting really was about. It's really about just people talking about things they wanna talk about and putting it out there for other people to learn, and I think if you come with that attitude, whether you're trying to monetize it or not, success will find its way to you. You just gotta
Oh
put in the
yeah,
work and really make a clear path for yourself But
Oh
it's just
yeah,
like in any business, you got to understand what your goals are before you get started.
correct, correct.
Because I
And, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that shapes your actions, right? So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. I was gonna say, by the time I have finished recording an episode and I sent it to be published, the goals for the podcast are you know she sends me the audio all the time, like, hey Chess, here it is, before you know what's uploaded. I've never listened to it. In 2 seasons, I've never listened to one edited piece of audio. I've probably only listened to maybe 3 episodes, out of um like all of my episodes for the 2 seasons. I think we're coming up on episode like 20 or something like that, um, because that was not the goal for me. And I'm kind of a forward facing person, so it's like, okay, we have to keep going to the next one. And so for me, the goal is to have the conversation and to put it out there.
I want to talk about that for a second. So who's your editor?
Bethany Hawkins with Crackers and Soup.
Okay, because I think that's interesting because for me, and I guess no, I guess it's knowing who you are as a person and your personality type, right? For me, I would at least want to listen to it for quality control, and I don't think that's a testament of your faith in the team that you built for yourself, right?
Oh
You you,
yeah,
you hired a person to do the work for you. The person has given you above and beyond is the word quality of in their work. So
she has.
so you feel like you're at the point where you're like, I don't even have to listen to it. I trust this person and I'm putting it up.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. I think you're the first person I've heard say that.
Oh,
And
100%.
I know for a lot of people, especially with the editing part of their podcast, it's a hit or miss. Some people don't trust anybody to do the work for them, and they want to take on that responsibility and make their life even 10 times harder, but they want to do that responsibility. And then you have somebody who hires out the work and has full trust in the person that they hired, where they're just like, all right, just put it up. So I think
Oh yeah,
people need to understand this part. Like personally, I think people should hire editors. I believe in hiring professionals to do the profession
yeah,
what their expertise is in. I'm you know I've fiddled in law and all that stuff, but I would hire a lawyer to do my legal stuff because that's the only way I can make sure. Like I'm not gonna yeah, I could do the LLC myself, but to make sure everything is done properly, I'll hire a lawyer to
yeah.
do it like I've done. So I think that's important for people to understand, but I think we need to hear more people like you say, just I'll just put it up, you know?
Just do it.
Um
That's what I hired her for. It's like that's not my skill set. That's not my area of expertise. I mean,
Right,
if to be honest, I wouldn't even know what to tell her to fix or to edit. If it's sound quality, I know she got that, right?
right,
If I've had a couple instances where something was said in a podcast and I'm like, I need you to like edit and delete and erase this part.
right,
And to be honest, that's probably the 4 that I listened to, and that was after they'd been posted anyway, because I just have that much faith in her work and like what she does. But the other part of that for me is it's meant to be a conversational podcast. It's not supposed to be super clean. It's not like a dirty podcast, but it's not supposed to be
right.
like this cut and dry pre put together like episode. No, it's just like we're talking about the real deal of entrepreneurship. It's also the real deal of the conversation and how it flows and how it goes. So um I do that a lot, and I try not to. I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody is gonna shoot themselves in the head listening to me talk like all the time. But I mean, that's just part of the platform of my show and how it goes. So
Let's talk about this because in order for you to get the type of person like that, and you mentioned it earlier about guests, is um, and I'm gonna change it up because Bethany feels uncomfortable about us keeping it your name.
okay.
She's getting, even
I
though
love
she's getting free promotion and free
you.
advertising. I want my affiliate link. But you talked about because the trust that you have with the person who you hired to help you with the work that they do for you is a vetting process as well. And you talked about the
Yeah.
vetting process that you do for guests. And we're just going to touch on this real quick because you're a trademark attorney and you deal with IP, and the whole situation with the whole Cardi B and Tasha K situation kind of falls in line with with that because I remember that interview she did with the girl from Queens that basically set up this whole legal gambit for her. Why is it important for podcasters, especially podcasters in our community, in the Black community, to understand we have to invest in the legal services and trademarking and making sure that we protect the assets that we create or the intellectual property we create?
Yeah, so there are so many different aspects of intellectual property. I mean, even in just that conversation from a legal aspect, you're talking about trademark, you're talking about copyright, we're talking about cease and desist, talking about different people or things maybe you should not be talking about. Even just from the beginning, from a trademark aspect, making sure that you are not operating a podcast that has the same or similar name as somebody else is very important because like you say, a lot of people, this is their business. So imagine doing all your shows, your episodes, monetizing your podcast, and somebody sends you a cease and desist because, instead of the spotlight, they are the spot on, right? And they're like, Corey, I'm doing the same thing. If you've made any money from this, I need you to run me all your profits. I need you to stop using this. I need you to take down every single episode. I need you to rebrand, give up the social media. Like, you would be heartbroken, right? And so a lot of times people think of legal services in general, but especially IP as reactive. And you spend so much more money being reactive, not only on legal services, but in the business itself because of those consequences and repercussions as you do, as opposed to if you've just been proactive in the first place. And then of course, you're talking and you're putting stuff out there for the world to hear and for um, as we know, this age of social media, word travels extremely fast, faster than it did through the grapevine, right? And so being careful about what you're saying and who you're talking about is also very important. Even doing video podcasts, making sure, and I don't know if you do this, but hey, if you're going to be a guest on the podcast, please don't wear anything Nike. Please don't wear, anything that has a logo. Don't have a Starbucks coffee cup, right? Because you don't have permission from those people to be licensing and using their stuff during this segment, right?
Get my pen and
Um,
pad. Let me
right.
get my pen and pad.
Like imagine something was said very controversial from me or another guest, and I'm like here and I'm talking like, okay, it's like, you don't want them coming for you. We don't want those problems. So there's a host of things to consider when it comes to podcasting from a legal perspective.
I think that's dope. That's one of the that's always been one of the biggest things for me is just the legal side. Even when I was doing music and stuff, I always wanted to when I had my rap group when we was younger, it's always just make sure we protect ourselves legally. So and I know it's hard for a lot of people in our community because we work with very limited resources and I know lawyers like yourself try to make it as affordable for people as possible, but there has to be some kind of investment that you have to make, whether you create a budget or a savings plan to get it done. It should be on your list to get done. Um,
Definitely.
what would be some advice for people who or some tips? Let me rephrase that. Some tips for people who are like, working with limited budgets, they're working on their podcasts, but they understand they need the legal services. What would be some tips you would give them to start working towards that?
First of all, do your research to find, whether it's myself or whoever you're going to hire to do the work for you, because you also want to make sure it's a good fit. I've turned down clients before because I'm like, we're not going to vibe well together. And like for the
Mhm.
trademark process, this is like a 12 to 18-month process in general. So we need to work well together. We need to get along. Um, the other thing that I would say is from a naming perspective, yes, you need to hire an attorney to do the deep dive name, work for you. But something as simple as looking like on Google, doing the quick Google search to see what else is out there and go way past the first page, right? Because we all know how the algorithms for Google work, right? And you don't need to worry about just big name people like a Google or an Apple or, whatever the case may be. Um, you can also use tests on the USPTO website. My I guess you could say my one hiccup with tests, especially for people who do not, who are not attorneys, is test is not like Google. Test does exactly what you tell it to. So, for instance, if you looked up Starbucks and put an extra S on the end, it's going to tell you there are no results. So, if you use that to file your trademark, one, they would probably be hitting you with a cease and desist, and you would not move forward with getting a filing. So now you've wasted money, right?
Right.
So doing those types of little things in the beginning can help you and at least help you CYA until you can get to an attorney. But I always recommend, like people will ask me, well, I'm in the process of doing A, B, and C, in the process of launching my podcast. When's the best time to trademark? Now, right? The good news is we have a first in time system here in the US. So you're basically reserving your spot saying, this is the first time when I apply the date that I'm going to use. And so whenever you have launched and you get ready, then we can show proof so that you can officially get the registration. But then you stop those who are coming after you from getting as well. So it's a pretty good, balance of, hey, let me go ahead and invest
Right.
before I've launched. Yeah.
Now, is it typically an expensive process? Because and this is no slander on any other lawyer. I know I'm starting to notice a lot more lawyers are getting into the trademark space through like Instagram Reels and stuff like that. A lot of people say, I've seen some say it's affordable or they can make it affordable or whatever. Is the process an expensive process for people,
I think
or it
that's
depends?
subjective.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I say that because what's affordable to you may not be affordable to me or affordable to, somebody else who's listening, right? I don't have any problem. I have transparent pricing. My trademark packages start at $2,500, but that also covers the bulk of your process. That's not just filing the paperwork. So that's doing that search, combing through literally hundreds of, like results for you, giving you a legal opinion letter. So you know where you stand within the process and how likely you have a chance of succeeding registration, that's filing the application, that's being your attorney of record throughout the entire process. So that's not just, a couple of little.
I think we. Oh man, right when she's dropping gems. Uh, Summer, I don't know if you can hear me. I think we lost you for a second.
Lost my
Today has
face,
been.
but I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yeah, now you're back. You
Oh, there
kinda
we go.
froze up a
Okay.
little bit. I like
uh,
today. This Tuesday is really on a roll this today.
Man, okay, really quick. So, are you familiar with Mercury retrogrades?
I've heard of people say. I mean, I've heard of it. Yes, I have a ton of friends that
So,
believe in that stuff. Yes.
I'm gonna take. Okay, I think Mercury retrograde is nothing but like the devil dressed up in like technological like wear or whatever, right? But technology is one of the biggest things, and I will tell you, ever since this retrograde started, I have been having the worst time with technology. So this does not surprise me today.
I mean, it happens. We're live streaming. If this was a recorded conversation, I could just put it behind. Send it to my editor or edit it myself, and nobody would know. Nobody would know what happened. But we're doing lives, and just for the podcasters watching, this is what happens. Because some people started to ask, should I podcast live?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's cool and it's fun, but there's a lot of things that come with it as well, like technical issues or mistakes, or you can't control. Like, I,
Other
I
liability.
or the liability. Okay, so I like how you snuck that one in there. So briefly, just real quick, just what do you mean by liability? Because I need to be careful then.
Well, we just like kind of going back how we're talking about that whole Cardi B and Tasha K thing, right? When you are doing a live podcast, you cannot control what the other person is going to say. Now,
Right,
hopefully, you have the correct contracts in place that say something to the effect of, if Cardi B comes to sue you, you won't come for me, right?
right.
But if you don't have that in place and you are not protecting yourself, then that's a whole other conversation, a whole other issue. But yeah, that's one of the big things because you can't control. And for some people, that's the beauty of it, right? It's spontaneous, it's fun. You don't know what's going to happen. Um, but yeah, that's one of the things you need to be worried about as well.
All right. So if you're watching people, you can reach out to Summer for that advice. We're not gonna keep picking her brain. And this is not supposed to be about legal advice and stuff, but I did want people to hear, and especially in the podcasting space, why it's important for us to really take the legal aspect, because sometimes I watch people's podcasts, in the group as well as just in general, and I'm not a lawyer, but some things I've learned over the years of doing business, and I just shake my head because I'm like, you're just setting yourself up for a really bad
Yeah.
situation. Um, and for me, when I'm not big into the gossip space or with like Tasha Kane, but I remember that interview. I remember hearing about the lawsuit, and I was paying attention to it because it is important for us. One of my biggest things for my business when I consult is I want to make sure you protect yourself before you even,
Mhm.
you don't want to finish, you don't want to ruin what you started, right? You put a lot of time,
Correct.
energy into this. And like when people ask me about the music, I'm just like, just stay away from copyrighted music. You
Yes.
can go on Fiverr, you can go to some of these services and just get royalty free music, just invest in it. You might have a friend that makes music, hire them.
Yeah.
Make sure you you own the copyright or you're on the
Yes.
copyright, whatever. Hire them, work for hire their ass, and get the music yourself. Or like myself, I can make something of myself and just put it up there.
Yeah.
Um, because you don't want to, like the other day I got hit with the music that I use in here. Somebody decided to take the music that YouTube gives you in YouTube Studio that you can use freely on live streams. He decided to make a YouTube video and claim the copyright on it, and Facebook hit me with the copyright. So I know what I'm doing. So I went and looked up all the information and I sent them all the information. Like I took screenshots, got it from YouTube, got the
Mhm.
copyright owner stuff, and was like, yo, and they had to take it down. But there's people out there that are doing things like that. So
It is.
you got to be real careful with that. So the best thing to do is if you're in doubt to either get legal advice or don't do it. That's how I look
Yeah.
at it. Until
Yeah.
you
And
can
you
afford to get the legal advice.
Yeah. And Corey, what's interesting is for those podcasters who use it as a business, and you may have like a business account on Instagram, right? And so for those of you who don't know, on Instagram, the business accounts cannot have copyright music, but you can have it like if you have a creator account, or some of those things. But that's part of the reason why, right? Is because in their mind frame, and I heard this specifically from one of the VPs while listening to a Reels thing, right? But in their mindset and their thought process is, if you're a business, you have the most to lose from getting hit with a copyright lawsuit from using music that you don't have a right to use.
Right.
So and I say that because a lot of people will say, well, I'm just going to create this kind of account because then I'll have access to the music. But in their backwards way, they're trying to protect you. So if that's a problem, or if that's an issue for you, consider that before you do it.
Yeah. Well, Summer, thank you for that. I just want to ask one more question. How,
Yeah.
with the vetting of your guests, um, what is some recommend from what you do and what you've learned in your space as a podcaster? What are some advice you can give to people watching about the vetting process of guests? Maybe one or two things that you can think of off the top of your head.
The first one would be to do it, right?
Mhm.
And then the second would be to don't be afraid or feel obligated to move forward with someone just because you did interview them as a potential candidate.
Okay, I think that's great advice. I think that's the truest advice you. And then of course you get your guest release, but before you
Yeah,
get to that point, you got
that
to make
too.
sure the
Yeah.
person you got to make sure the person is definitely in line with your product and what you're trying to accomplish, because I've seen that. And I've even had some requests for guests to be a guest on people's shows, and one of the questions I ask myself is, where do I fit in this show?
Hmm.
Where do I fit in this conversation? Recently, I just told I'm going to be doing an interview. I got to get used to this role, being the founder of the association, and we're starting to get more and more traction in the industry. I'm getting more requests, and one of the things I have to ask myself as a guest is, do I want to be in line with what they're doing over there as
Correct.
well? Um, and I had to let them know, like, I understand you guys talk about different things, but I'm here to talk about podcasting. I'm here to talk about what I'm doing. And because it's an inclusive community and a diverse community, I'm not going to talk about things like LGBTQ
Hmm.
or genders and stuff like that. I'm not, unless we're talking about it in a positive light in the roles that these people play in our
Right.
society. I'm not doing it. So, I mean, that particular podcast, they have good conversations, but I feel like I have to just make that as a disclaimer for anybody
Hmm.
who I'm talking to, because I'm not trying to get myself put in a position. I mean, I know how to just shut off the mic and walk away. My
Yeah.
personality is just like, I'm not gonna answer that question. We can go back and forth for the next 30 minutes just doing that cycle.
Yeah.
I have the patience for that. But a lot of people feel obligated and they feel pressured into those things, and I'm not going to answer questions that I feel are going to put me in a situation. So I
Yeah,
think that's important too for podcasters listening, and I guess there's a legal aspect for that too, right?
it is. There's also a legal aspect for that too. And it's good if you have, again, kind of goes back to that contract, right? And that guest
Yeah.
release. I recently was asked to do like somebody's summit. And of course, always people read what you sign, right?
Yes.
There's like, a portion in there, for instance, where they're saying, okay, by being a guest of ours, you give us the right to use your content in the future for whatever purpose we choose, whether it be paid or free. No, I don't. So you can either redline as part of the contract, or I don't have to be a speaker at your event, right?
Right.
And so, the other thing, Corey, kind of going back to like that advice though, that I would say is also, even if you record an episode, if you have that in your guest release that you are not obligated to use it, in case the vibe is off, don't feel bad about not publishing episodes, because I've done that before too. I'm like, this was the most awkward interview. I cannot put this on my podcast.
Right.
So I would say that's something else too, right?
Well, it's about protecting your brand as well. It's not just the
Correct.
legal stuff. You want to protect the product that you're creating, and that's enough goes all the way back to knowing what your intentions are when you first start this and everything.
Correct.
All of it is connected. It all always goes back to that initial part of why am I doing this. So I really appreciate that. Yes, and your audience can definitely hear you being awkward.
Yes.
Um, I know there's probably some episodes on here where I was just like, I don't know what to say. I try to clean it up as fast as possible, but there are those brief seconds, you could be like, oh, okay. Um, so how can people find you? How can they reach out to you if they want to be a guest on your show or they want to listen to your show? What are some ways they can reach out to you?
Yeah, so we are the Lurk Lounge podcast we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all of the major podcasting
So you have your website,
platforms.
and you also have the website
Uh,
on Anchor, right?
yep, we
Oh,
got the website there on Anchor. On Instagram, we are at the Lurk Lounge. And as far as me personally, I really kind of hang out more so on Instagram at the business page at Burnley Law.
there you go. So thank you for being here, Summer. I really appreciate you being
Thanks
here
for having
and
me.
let me pick your brain a little bit for the audience. I would love to have you. Hopefully we'll be working on some other shows through the association. We'd love to have a more candid conversation about the legal space,
I'm down.
some stuff like that. So I'll definitely reach out to you. But you have any? Oh, I know. I almost forgot what my own show. So real quick, what does it mean for you to be a black podcaster? Black podcaster, and what is you've been a member of the association for a while. What does it mean for you to be a member of the Black Podcasters Association?
I have really enjoyed kind of like the community of the space, right? And mainly because, again, as a Black woman, I feel like there are not too many spaces that I can go in the online world that are for me, right? That see me, that authentically get me, where I don't have to show up as anybody else other than my, nerdy Black girl magic self. So I love the fact of what you guys are doing and how
Mhm.
you guys are helping and promoting Black podcasters and what everybody as a collective is doing as far as the podcasting industry. And I also, from a community aspect, love the way everybody's in there picking brains. Like, hey, do we have guests who can come and talk about X, Y, and Z? Can I be a guest? What do you guys think about this kind of, um, you know, hardware or whatever the case may be? I love that because, outside of that, you have to rely on Google. And just knowing that you have a community and a place you can go to and like piggyback off of is cool. And I see people asking questions sometimes about legal stuff or trademark stuff, and I like to just not necessarily promote myself, but just be like, hey, these are things you should check out,
Yeah,
before you move forward. So yeah,
I really
thank
appreciate.
you for your work and what you're doing.
Thank you, and I mean, like I tell everybody else, it wouldn't be a community without you guys. So I really appreciate everybody's input and just being there and being a part of it. So I do really appreciate you being there. Is there any last things you want to say before we wrap up? Any advice or anything you want to, any shout outs besides Bethany?
Besides Bethany, you know what? But besides you and Bethany, holding this space down, I appreciate it. I will just say, guys, in all honesty, just continue doing what you're doing, putting your sauce on your stuff and putting yourself out there because somebody is listening somewhere and you are impacting someone somewhere. And for me, I know like just doing that's enough for me. So
All right. Thank you, Summer. Again, thank you everybody for checking out the Spotlight. Make sure you tune into our next show coming up this Friday, January 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we will be spotlighting our next Black Podcast Association member, Ashley Schuler. She is a a business consultant. She is also the host of Conversation with at hashtag Ask Ash. Oh gosh, that's like a tongue twister for me. And please make sure you subscribe and tap the notification bell if you're watching this on YouTube or any of your other favorite platforms. And if you'd like to learn more about the Black Podcasters Association, you can go to blackpodcastersassociation.com where you can learn more about what we do. And if you decide you want to be a member, there's an opportunity for you to sign up as well. Again, thank you, Summer, and have a good afternoon.
thanks, guys.